The wind tore through the mountains like a living thing, carrying snow that stung Marla's cheeks and clawed at her thin coat. Her small cabin, perched precariously on a rocky slope, seemed almost swallowed by the storm. Inside, the fire sputtered in the hearth, casting a weak orange glow across the bare walls. Marla clutched her child to her chest, rocking him gently. His small body was warm against her own, but the tremble in his limbs mirrored the terror in her heart. She had always managed on her own, since her husband's death left her alone in this unforgiving land. But today was different. Today, she wasn't just facing the elements. Today, a knock on the door had shattered the fragile safety she had built around her tiny family. The county officer had stood in the doorway, tall and imposing, a folder clutched in one hand, his expression unreadable but cold. "We need to take the boy," he had said, voice clipped and formal. Marla had frozen, her heart hammering in her chest like a trapped bird. "Please, please don't take my child," she had begged, tears streaming down her face. Her voice cracked, raw with desperation. "He's all I have left. I've done everything I can to care for him. Please don't take him." The officer's jaw tightened. He glanced at the boy, who now whimpered softly in Marla's arms. "I'm afraid the law's clear," he said, his tone unmoving. "We have reports. Insufficient heating, food shortages, unsafe living conditions. He can't remain here." Panic and helplessness coiled in Marla's chest like a living thing. She felt trapped, powerless. Her cabin, her sanctuary, suddenly seemed too small to protect them from the outside world. She rocked her son harder, murmuring promises she didn't know if she could keep. "I can take care of him. I promise, please. I'll do whatever it takes." The officer's expression remained rigid, as if her pleas were just part of the wind howling around the cabin. It was hopeless, until the door behind him creaked and a shadow moved in the flickering light. The mountain man stepped forward. He had arrived during the blizzard a few nights before, appearing almost out of nowhere. Marla had found him half frozen in the snow, dragged him into her cabin, fed him, and wrapped him in blankets. They had shared no words beyond the necessary, yet a quiet trust had grown between them. Now he stood in the doorway, tall and silent, as if the storm itself had molded him into a guardian. Marla's eyes widened. She had never seen him so purposeful, so commanding. His coat was still dusted with snow, his boots thick with ice, but he radiated a calm authority that seemed to fill the small cabin. His gaze met the officer's, unwavering and intense, silent yet heavy with meaning. The officer shifted uncomfortably under the mountain man's steady stare. There was no threat in it, just a quiet, unyielding certainty. It was the gaze of someone who had faced life and death countless times in the wilderness and understood the fragility and worth of life. The room seemed to shrink around them, the firelight flickering over tense faces and frozen walls. Marla's voice trembled as she whispered to her child, He will protect us." Her heart pounded in her chest. She had never believed in miracles, yet here, in the frozen wilderness, one stood silently beside her, a living shield against the storm and the world outside. The mountain man did not speak. He did not need to. The officer, a man trained to enforce regulations and rely on procedure, suddenly felt the weight of instinct and unspoken truth. He glanced around the cabin, seeing the fire that still burned, the blankets carefully wrapped around the child, the worn but clean dishes on the table. This small space was more than shelter. It was a home, built of care and love, fragile yet fiercely guarded. For a long moment, silence hung thick in the air. The only sounds were the faint crackle of the fire, the wind hammering the cabin walls, and the soft whimpers of the boy. Marla's hands shook as she held him closer, feeling the warmth of his small body against her own, willing him to feel safe. Finally, the officer's eyes flicked back to the mountain man. He swallowed hard, sensing something he couldn't name, something beyond the authority of law, beyond procedure or regulation. The mountain man's presence spoke of endurance, of survival, of loyalty that required no words. It was as if the mountains themselves had sent him to this cabin, to this woman and child, to stand guard against injustice and the unforgiving world. Marla's throat tightened. "Please," she whispered again, barely audible. "I have nothing. Nothing but him. I can't lose him. I can't. I won't." Her voice broke, the desperation raw and consuming. She felt a strange mix of shame and relief that the mountain man had arrived, yet a deep, primal hope that perhaps he could help them. The mountain man stepped forward, moving slowly, deliberately, until he stood beside her. His hand rested lightly on her shoulder, rough and calloused, but steady. It was a small gesture, yet it carried immense reassurance. The officer's jaw clenched, the cold formality of his role wavering under the quiet, undeniable authority of the man before him. For a heartbeat, the world seemed to pause. The wind outside howled, but inside the cabin there was stillness, a fragile suspension of time. The mountain man's eyes met the officer's, and without a word, the message was clear. The child would not leave this place. The officer looked into those eyes, into the stoic, unwavering face of a man who had survived nature's harshest tests and emerged unbroken, and he faltered. "Regulations," the officer began, his voice uncertain as if testing his own courage. But the words felt hollow, meaningless against the weight of quiet conviction. He stepped back, glancing at the snow outside, the wind tearing at his coat. After a tense moment, he shook his head and muttered something about needing to return to his vehicle, the authority of the law reluctantly yielding to the undeniable truth before him. Marla collapsed into the nearest chair, her son clutched tightly to her chest, tears freezing on her cheeks. She whispered prayers she hadn't dared voice in years, murmuring words of gratitude into the firelight. The mountain man remained silent, his presence still commanding yet gentle. He did not wait for thanks, did not demand recognition. His role had been simple: protect. And now, the danger had passed. The storm outside gradually softened, the wind retreating into the distance, leaving a quiet, white silence that blanketed the mountains. Marla looked at the man who had saved them and felt a surge of emotions she could barely name. Relief, awe, gratitude, and something deeper, something that hinted at hope. In the midst of fear and desperation, she had found a protector, a reminder that even in the harshest conditions, courage and kindness could still walk into your life, silent and unwavering. She wrapped the blankets tighter around her child and glanced at the mountain man. He gave a small, almost imperceptible nod, then moved toward the doorway. Without a word, he stepped out into the snow, vanishing into the fading storm as silently as he had arrived. Marla watched him go, feeling a mixture of loss and profound respect. The danger had passed, but the impact of his presence lingered, a quiet force that would shape her life for years to come. In that small, fire-lit cabin, mother and child huddled together, hearts still racing, bodies trembling from fear and cold. But beneath the terror, a seed of strength had been planted, a belief that even when the world seemed against you, help could arrive in the most unexpected form. And sometimes that help came silent, unassuming, and stronger than any law, any storm, or any fear. That night, Marla finally allowed herself to rest, holding her son close, listening to the wind fade and the quiet of the mountains settle around them. She knew life would still be difficult, still lonely at times, but she also knew that courage, kindness, and unexpected guardians could change everything. And for the first time in months, she slept without dread, feeling the fragile warmth of hope return to her heart.